Story 1. When I was 5, a Pizza Hut employee told me that the powder on the breadsticks was called fairy dust. I ordered extra fairy dust on my breadsticks until I was around 14, when an employee asked whether I meant garlic salt. It still devastates me to realize how obtuse I was. Story 2. It wasn't very long, but when I was learning to drive, my dad explained the rule of thumb for a safe distance behind the car in front of you. I thought it meant to hold my thumb up, and if my thumb did not cover the whole car, I was too close. When he caught me doing that, he asked what I was doing. When I explained, he burst out laughing, then thought about it and said it was not a bad idea, though a bit distracting. Story 3. We bought a nice liquor cabinet. We had it delivered and noticed it was a bit shorter than we thought. No problem. 3 years later, we are moving. When we lifted the cabinet, these beautiful ornate screw-on legs, wrapped in tape and bubble wrap, fell off the bottom of the cabinet. It looks so much better now. Story 4. Until last week, when my father-in-law made a call on his basic non-touchscreen flip phone, he would open the menu, scroll to the phone icon, select contacts, find the person, press OK, then press the soft key to call. When he said he preferred his landline because he could just dial the number, I said, "Humor me. Just dial the number and hit the talk button." I have never seen a man so simultaneously grateful and embarrassed. Story 5. A couple of years ago, I was trying to open a toothpaste tube and had to break the seal. I used to look for something like a nail to do it. One day, I looked at the pointy end of the cap and thought about using it to break the seal. To my surprise, it fit and broke the seal effortlessly. The same method worked on every other tube product and their caps in the house. My mind was blown. Story 6. For as long as I can remember, I removed silverware and utensils from the dishwasher tray, put them in the drawers, and then went back for more. One day, I watched my wife lift the tray out of the dishwasher, and I stood there with my mouth open. Story 7. When I was a kid, I loved drinking coffee but did not know how to make it. My mom taught me, but the ratio she gave me was 1 tablespoon per pot of coffee instead of the correct ratio of 1 tablespoon per cup of water. Fast forward 13 years, a couple of months ago, I was reading the back of my Folgers coffee container and saw a small diagram showing the proper amounts to use. I realized my mom had given me the wrong amount so she would not run out of coffee, and I was not very energized for school. Story 8. I always thought eggplant tasted itchy, like itchy was a flavor like sour or salty. I fed some to my baby, and his face turned red wherever the eggplant touched. I realized we are both allergic to eggplant, and itchy is not a flavor. Edit. Thank you for the silver, kind internet strangers. Story 9. Apparently the red ring around the bologna is not supposed to be eaten. Story 10. My mom has been pronouncing Massachusetts as Massachusetts for years, and no one corrected her because they thought she had strong feelings about the state. Story 11. I lived in a house for 6 years with a bathroom that had no shelf or cupboard for toiletries. I was disappointed and used a windowsill that was far too small for everything. One day a friend visited and asked why we did not have anything in the bathroom cupboard. I was confused, so he showed me. The mirror I had been using for 6 years had a hidden compartment behind it. It was a mirror door to a mounted cupboard on the wall. I was astonished and immediately moved my things from the windowsill into the cupboard. My friend was baffled that I had not noticed the space behind the mirror. There was an obvious gap between it and the wall that I had somehow failed to see. Story 12. No one ever told me you do not need to buy shoes with 2 fingers of space in front of the toes after your feet stop growing. I had been buying an entire size too big until about age 23. One day in college, I tried a pair of Merrell barefoot-type shoes and, after reading the sizing guide, my mind was blown. It is a terribly obvious mistake I, a 29-year-old female, like to blame on being an only child, but really I am just a moron. Story 13. This was a few years ago. I was the director of information technology for a very large company. I was given a new cell phone and told to set up my voicemail. I didn't know that when I recorded my name, it would be played to whomever I left a voicemail for. The name I recorded was Duder84 Corporate Information Technology God. I worked there for 4 years until someone in the hallway referred to me as the Corporate Information Technology God. I was so embarrassed. Story 14. My mom used to call me a bull in a china shop. I always heard it as bowl in a china shop and thought it was a compliment. When I was about 22, I heard someone else use the phrase and realized she meant bowl, not bowl. Story 15. I grew up without a mother. She died when I was 6. I was afraid to ask my father how to insert a tampon. When I was about 18, I told some friends that tampons stuck out too far from my vagina and made me feel like I waddled when I walked. A friend asked how I was inserting them. I thought they would get stuck and I wasn't pushing them in far enough. I did it wrong for about 5 years. My friends still tease me about it. I often use the deceased mother explanation, but looking back it is pretty straightforward how to insert one. Update. For those asking, I did not feel comfortable with my body, so I am not sure I fully understood the instructions. For those asking about my father, he was a very good dad. He made normal parenting mistakes, but as a substitute mother he did a great job. He taught me to shave my legs using funny voices, and he was a Girl Scout troop leader for almost 10 years. He tried to learn how to French braid, and he used to comb my very messy, ratty hair every day. Update. Thank you, kind stranger, for popping my silver cherry. Story 16. I owned a car with swivel headlights. They were nice to have, but after 3 years I realized I had never turned the feature on. Story 17. My name is Ryan. It was not until first grade that I realized my name was not in the alphabet. My mom had told me my name was in the alphabet, and I felt so lucky. She meant that the letters used to spell my name are in the alphabet. But no, it took that long to realize the alphabet did not go W, X, Ryan, Z. Story 18. Last month was the first time I discovered lint rollers were peelable. I literally sat there for a minute to take that in. Edit. I am 20. Story 19. I thought this emoji was a shy smile for 2 years, because on my Galaxy it did not look very annoyed like it does on other phones. Then my boyfriend told me it was a rolling eyes emoji. I had been using it with everyone to mean a smile, but they must have thought I was being mean. Story 20. My eldest child had a habit of blowing out of his diapers. We tried everything, but several times a week we had to pull the poop-filled onesie over his head and bathe the poop-covered baby. When I was pregnant with our second child, a post went viral explaining that infant onesies are made with broad shoulders so you can pull them down and off instead of over the head. My older child would have had many fewer incidents of poop in his hair if I had known that back then. Story 21. I work the help desk, and we use a specific terrible piece of software for our support system, International Business Machines Notes. It turned out that for the first 9 months I had been working there, it was not set up properly, so I did not send any emails from it at all. There were no notifications that a ticket was assigned to me, no responses from me, and no close notifications. Someone noticed the problem, fixed a setting, and I immediately sent more than 1,000 emails to everyone in the company. Story 22. I realized the multicolored strips of tape glued to the door frames of gas stations and similar places are used to identify robbers, not to measure people as they walk out. They could be used that way, but that is not their purpose. Unless you are the robber. Story 23. I used to lace the speed hooks on my boots with 2 hands until I saw my linesman friend use the speed hooks on his boots like this. I was shocked. Story 24. This is not about me. My dad has been spelling his name wrong his whole life. He is 51 and has always spelled it Jeffrey. A few months ago my mom pulled out his birth certificate and we discovered it is actually spelled Jeffrey. I do not know if he spells it correctly now, but it was definitely an oh shit moment for him. Story 25. I learned last year that bust a nut isn't an expression for when something hits your testicles or when you land in a way that crushes them. Story 26. We were at Crate and Barrel. I was telling my girlfriend how odd it is that tongs have such a small opening, so you have to pry them open very wide and then squeeze to close. In the middle of my sentence, she pressed the release button on the tongs I was holding, and I stopped in shame. Story 27. When I was a kid and acting up, my dad would always threaten to leave me at this mean old lady's house. Her name was Helen Handbasket. Fast forward about 28 years, and it clicked out of nowhere while I was on a customer call at work. Customer. This whole network is going to hell in a handbasket. I'm an idiot. Customer. Did you figure it out? Me, oh no, not yet. Story 28. I used to fill the kettle through the spout. My parents had always done it that way, so I thought the center of the lid was mainly decorative and not functional. I do not know why I never questioned it. One day I bought a new tea kettle and my husband asked what was inside the lid. He easily opened the center and pulled out a manual with instructions and other information. I had been drinking water with paper residue for about 2 weeks. Story 29. When I first got a debit card and started going out to eat with friends, I left a cash tip on the table and wrote that amount on the receipt. For at least 6 months, I gave double tips to every waitress I had. Story 30. One day, I used the key fob to remotely start my dad's car. It was an oh shit moment for him. For 2 years, he did not realize he had this handy little function. Story 31. When I was a kid, I was told the paper on cupcakes or muffins was edible. I spent a decade eating them, paper and all, until a friend pointed out otherwise. Story 32. I am lactose intolerant. I did not know this for over 25 years. I always had to go to the bathroom after eating foods with cheese. One day it clicked. I bought some Lactaid, took it before my next meal with cheese, and I did not have to go to the bathroom. It was mind-blowing. I have no idea how I did not make the connection for years. So instead of an oh shit moment, I had a no shit moment. Edit. Thanks for the silver, strangers. As expected on Reddit, my top comment is about how to avoid pooping. Story 33. My family always kept a cup next to the bathroom sink for rinsing after brushing or for a quick drink in the middle of the night. My grandmother had the same cup, and I used it for years when I was thirsty. One day she saw me and said, "Don't use that cup. That's where grandma keeps her teeth." Story 34. I was living in a foreign country and actively learning the language. Social cues go a long way when learning a language on the spot. Someone once said a phrase to me while serving a hot dish that I assumed meant, "Excuse me," after going through crowds and lines and repeating the same phrase to be respectful. I abruptly discovered the phrase actually meant, "Enjoy." Hindsight, it completely makes sense. The odd looks I received when saying enjoy while squeezing past people finally made sense. Wowzers, you all really know how to make a grown man blush. Thanks for the gold and silver, you beautiful strangers. I'm glad my mistakes bring such enjoyment and hilarity to the world. This happened while I was living in Vietnam. The phrase was excusez-moi. It was even more deceiving because it was similar to the phrase for sorry, which is excusez-moi. That was year 1. The following 3 years were full of similar mistakes. Tonal languages are tough. Story 35. I was 30 when I found out that an event calendar, as I called it, is not a thing. It is an advent calendar. I was 32 when I found out Advent is not short for adventure. Story 36. I didn't realize I had to brush the back of my teeth as well as the front until I was 15. I had 9 fillings and a root canal. Story 37. My wife and I have a ceiling fan with a light in our bedroom in the house we moved into 2 years ago. It has a remote control for the fan and the light. About a year and a half ago, the lights suddenly stopped working. The fan works fine and we did not have a lot of money, so we used lamps in the room and were always frustrated with how dark it was. A few weeks ago, I was scrolling a Reddit thread on AskReddit in the Today I Messed Up subreddit. The top post was a guy saying his lights stopped working years ago and he later discovered they were just dimmed, which you do by holding down the button on the remote. They were dimmed. Story 38. I did not find out that I was supposed to punch out for lunch until my 3rd job. Even then, a coworker only mentioned in passing that they were clocking out. Story 39. I wound a battery-powered watch for about a year. Fuck. Thanks for making me think of that. Story 40. Sorry, I can't assist with editing sexual content that involves minors. I can help in one of these ways. Rewrite the passage to feature an adult protagonist and remove explicit detail so it is suitable for Azure text-to-speech. Remove the sexual content entirely and edit the remaining text for clarity and TTS. Create a neutral, non-sexual anecdote that preserves the original tone. Tell me which option you want, or paste a version that clearly involves adults and I will edit it. Story 41. Former school nurse here. A surprisingly large number of high school boys do not know what circumcision is. Many believe they were born circumcised. When they first see a foreskin, they are astonished. When they learn that the brown ring on their penis is a scar from foreskin removal, they are similarly surprised. Story 42. I ate mangoes with the skin on for a while before I learned you are supposed to peel them. Story 43. I used to think that just reading the material was how everyone studied, so that's how I did it too. I never understood why my grades were so low. I would think, I read the page and I do not know what happened, until I saw my friend making flowcharts and summaries. I told him we did not have to do that and he said he was just studying. It blew my mind how much better my grades became. Edit. I had heard that username joke before. Sorry. Story 44. I am colorblind. For most of my life, I thought peanut butter was green until I turned 19. When I learned it was brown, my mind was blown. It took so long because people rarely talk about the colors of everyday things. Story 45. I didn't know you could take off the caps of those refrigerated coffee creamers. I had been stabbing through the foil with a knife for years until my uncle saw me and asked, "What the fuck are you doing?" Laughing out loud. Edit. I am a woman. People always assume I am a man from my comments. Story 46. Cock guns. Everyone says you should pull the gun toward you, but I saw a Reddit comment saying they are designed to be pushed away instead. My boss looks at me funny for doing it, but pushing away produces a much cleaner, tighter bead. To clarify, you slide the entire gun along the crack you are sealing. You can slide it either toward you or away from you. Most people pull the gun and tip toward themselves, but sliding in the opposite direction works well. Thanks to the people who shared additional tips on making the finish cleaner and better. Story 47. I was fortunate enough to buy my own home due to unfortunate circumstances. I moved in and the thermostat was set to about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. As time went on, I could not figure out why there was no visible way to change the temperature. My electric bill was very high every month. The thermostat was well above eye level and I lived alone for quite some time, although family and friends visited regularly. After several months of opening or closing windows to adapt to the weather, I finally asked my niece to check the thermostat for a way to change the temperature. She looked around and saw a tab I was supposed to pull to reveal the buttons and settings of the thermostat. Oh no. I am glad I posted this late enough for it to go mostly unnoticed. It has been months, not years. Story 48. I thought of a second one. I was incredibly sheltered growing up. Anything related to sex was taboo and not discussed. I was in middle school when instant messaging became mainstream. I could not understand why the boy I had a crush on kept laughing at me and telling me not to use the shorthand come for come. I did not find out for a few years. I genuinely thought a hand job was frantically waving side to side with the palm on the penis, and a blow job was blowing on a penis. This belief lasted until around 8th grade. Sigh. Story 49. You do need to disassemble your laundry dryer and clean the lint out from underneath the drum once per year. I am 31 and never knew this. No one ever said anything and I never saw anyone do it. The worst part is that my parents also learned this the hard way and did not tell me when I bought my first dryer. Luckily, my wife and I discovered the lint buildup when changing the rollers. I said to my parents, "Wow, it really builds up in there?" And they replied, "Oh yes, you need to do that about once a year." I was stunned. Story 50. I taught myself how to play the clarinet. 6 months later, someone told me that I had been playing with the mouthpiece upside down. Story 51. From when I first learned the word backpack until about 5th grade, I called them packpacks. Story 52. After moving to a new city, I went to the laundromat. The Korean woman working there was yelling about something I couldn't understand. After some pantomime, it became clear she was upset that I was putting in the wrong detergent. But it was the same kind I had been using for 8 years since I moved away to go to college. It turned out I had been washing my clothes with only fabric softener for nearly a decade. My clothes always smelled good, so I never thought about it. Not my proudest moment. Story 53. Do you ever buy soda in a 6 or 8-pack of bottles and then struggle to twist and pull a bottle out of the tight plastic rings? There is a pull tab connected to a perforated line in the plastic. You can just pull that, and the plastic will break easily when you pull the bottle free. My aunt taught me this over 20 years ago because no one in my immediate family knew about it. I let my fiancé in on the secret just last week. Story 54. Back in the early 2010s, my boyfriend and I had a PlayStation that we used for Netflix and other services because we did not have a smart television. The controller had such a short cord that we always had to get up from the couch to change the show or press any buttons. He also had to sit on the floor close to the television to play video games. One day my brother came to visit. We put something on Netflix and got up to use the controller as usual. My brother unplugged the controller, handed it to us and said, "You realize this is a wireless controller, right?" We were dumbfounded. Why was there a cord attached? It turned out the cord was just to charge the wireless controller. My mind was blown. Wow, 3 silver awards and my highest rated comment ever, and it is about me being a complete idiot. Seems about right. Story 55. I travel frequently for work, and only just noticed that most laptop bags have a strap to fit over the handle of a rolling suitcase. Story 56. I have had a flashlight for nearly 10 years. I originally bought it because it looked like a lightsaber and it was inexpensive. I thought twisting the lens would focus the beam, but after I put batteries in, twisting the top did not change the focus. I assumed the twistable top was just part of its cheap construction. About a month ago, a storm picked up at night and I went out to make sure nothing would blow away. As I tried to open the gate, the flashlight slipped. I caught it by the twisty top and the rest of the flashlight slid about 2 inches down. Pulling the top up revealed that it converts into a lantern to light a wide area. It is not a big deal, but there have been times when it would have been useful to set the flashlight down and illuminate an area. Update. I did not expect this reaction, so I included pictures because many people were interested. No, it is not a fleshlight. How it remained for about 10 years. What I discovered it could do. Its final form. Update 2. What the heck? This blew up. User Poppin_pomegranate actually found it. Story 57. When I realized at 18 that the phrase is up and atom, not up and atom, I wondered who the hell Adam was. I had always thought it was a stupid phrase. Story 58. I dated an Asian woman some years ago. When we got Chinese takeout, she unfolded the box and laid it flat like a plate. She said the box was designed to be the plate and could never understand why her friends always scoop the food onto another plate. I now do this all the time and it weirds people out. Story 59. For more than 20 years I have been saying play it by ear instead of play it by ear. After a lengthy argument and a quick Google search, I was left with my tail between my legs. Story 60. Pronouncing hybrid as high bird. My husband repeated it to me in a snuffleupagus voice, and I swear I had a Ratatouille-style food critic flashback to every time in my life I had said it wrong. I was 33. Story 61. A family member gave me a light blue microwave as a housewarming gift, and I used it for about 3 years. I thought it was cool. I had never seen a blue microwave before. One night a friend asked why I had never removed the blue plastic film and peeled it off for me. I was surprised to discover it was actually silver. I still miss my blue microwave sometimes. Story 62. I am a 34-year-old man who grew up with my grandmother and mother. Because of that, I had very few male influences when I was young, and the internet was not helpful. When I was 12, my mother decided to move us in with her boyfriend. The first night in our new home, I walked out of the shower wearing a towel. My stepdad told me I was not a girl and asked why I was wearing my towel that way. He said that guys do not wear their towels like that. I then realized I had always worn my towel up to my chest because that was what I had seen growing up, and I had not understood that people did that to cover their chests. I was very embarrassed. In short, I wore my towel like a girl until I was 12. Story 63. I found out I was lighting incense wrong. My boyfriend and I bought a bunch to add to our collection of pleasant scents. We would light them and they would flare up into a small inferno. Convinced we were buying cheap, garbage incense, we stopped using them. I proceeded to buy a different brand hoping those would work. I test-lit one and the same thing happened. It flared up into a fire. Our roommate told us you are supposed to blow them out once they catch. Oops. Edit. Thanks for the award and the grammar correction. I never expected nearly burning the apartment down to prompt so many comments about how incense works. Story 64. Not sure why, but I completely thought the White House was in Washington state until I was about 23. It's a hole in my knowledge I can neither explain nor defend. I have since visited and confirmed it is in the District of Columbia. Story 65. In French, être retard means to be late or delayed. When I started to learn English, I assumed that to be retarded meant to be late. I did not understand why people were laughing when I said sorry I was retarded until someone told me. Story 66. I had always assumed gas stations had pipes that led to a nearby oil plant. I live in Houston, so during Hurricane Harvey in 2017 there was a lot of news about gas stations running dry because they were not being refilled. I was in the car with my sisters and said I did not understand how the gas supply could be limited when the pipes are underground and not affected by flooding. They both looked at me in confusion. One asked if I knew that trucks come to fill gas stations. I was shocked and had no idea. They then asked what I thought the big trucks at small city gas stations with hoses going into the ground were doing. I replied that they were filling up their cars. It was not something I did wrong, but it was something I had misunderstood for 17 years. Story 67. I watched side 2 of Goodfellas without realizing it was a 2-part digital video disc. For years my opinion was that the film started fast, felt rushed, and did not develop the characters enough. I thought it was overrated. Then I saw a scene I had never seen and realized I had accidentally only watched half the movie. I rented it later that week and, as soon as it started, knew I had missed the first half. It is my favorite movie of all time. Story 68. Pronouncing Chick-fil-A as Chick-fil-A. I never had one nearby, so I mostly pronounced it that way in my head and no one corrected me. When one opened nearby, I told the guys at work we had to go try Chick-fil-A. They still tease me about it. Story 69. I remember playing a Nintendo 64. It was not years, only about one. I got a Nintendo 64 for Christmas the year they released Super Mario 64. My family had splurged to get me the game and the console, so I did not get a new game until my birthday nearly a year later in October. Until then, I played by gripping the outer prongs of the controller. It was not until I saw a diagram of recommended playstyles in the instruction booklet for Star Wars Shadows of the Empire that I realized it was much easier to put my left hand on the center prong. I discovered that many others had different ways of holding the Nintendo 64, and it was great to see the love for the console. I admit that I am often somewhat dumb. Story 70. As a kid, I never knew saving in video games was possible. When I was about 11, I started watching gaming videos on YouTube and learned I could save my progress. I was absolutely mind-blown to discover that Pokemon was not meant to be finished in a single day. Story 71. My father would cook grilled cheese sandwiches for breakfast when I was growing up. He'd burn those sandwiches about 75% of the time. When he dropped the crispy, black sandwich in front of me, he'd always say, "Cleans your teeth." I was 22 when a roommate saw me burn a grilled cheese sandwich. I wasn't concerned and explained, "It cleans your teeth." With immediate disbelief, he accused me of lying. Ratatouille style, I was transported back to being a child, a time when I believed my dad might not lie to me nearly every morning. I later confronted my father. He got a kick out of it. Story 72. I am vigorously checking this thread to make sure I am not an idiot. Story 73. This is perfect for the "today I fucked up" author who did not know about incognito mode. Story 74. While washing and drying my pet's water dishes, I wondered, why am I drying the inside when it will just fill with water? I've had pets my whole life and have been doing this for 30 years, always drying the dishes. Story 75. Sometimes I assume I know the lyrics to songs I have heard on the radio for a long time. I always sang Toto's Africa as I miss the rains down in Africa until someone told me it is I bless the rains down in Africa. I argued that made no sense. Why would someone bless the rain? It is a song about longing to return to Africa, which is why they would miss the rain. Then I went home and looked up the lyrics. Story 76. I always put my insoles in with the gel side facing up. I could not figure out for the life of me how people liked them. One day I happened to see someone put theirs in correctly. I felt like the world's biggest fool. Story 77. I accidentally reported my tips incorrectly during my first month working at a restaurant. I am not sure how I did it, but I did not get taxed on a couple of $100s because I never reported them as income. This applied only to cash tips, and I have since been told that cash tips did not need to be reported. Did I do anything wrong? Story 78. I was about 16 when I learned there is paper around a Reese's peanut butter cup. Growing up, my family only bought the small ones you can eat in one bite, so I had never had a chance to bite into a regular one and actually see the paper. One day my sister and I were talking about what candy to hand out on Halloween, and I mentioned that peanut butter cups were good, except that they had a chewy center, which confused her. We argued for a few minutes about whether they were chewy. Then she stopped mid-sentence, and I could see that something had clicked for her. She went to the kitchen, grabbed one, and told me to eat it. She laughed hysterically when I put the whole chocolate, still wrapped in a little brown paper, into my mouth. To this day, it remains my greatest shame. Story 79. For years, I struggled to remove the cap from new deodorant, the inner cap that sits over the stick. It was always stuck. About a year ago, I had an aha moment and discovered I could simply crank the deodorant up until the cap could be removed easily. I am 34. It took me that long to realize it. Thank you for my first silver and first gold. I am glad I can teach people an easier way to open new deodorant sticks. Story 80. My significant other and I were in a fight, and he said, "You are unbelievably selfish and impossible to talk to." Somehow my defense mechanisms were not engaged at that moment because I heard him and realized it was true. I saw for the first time that I had been mostly an asshole all my life. That is, super defensive and wrong about a lot of things, also known as a narcissist. I have since had to learn how to be kind, to listen, and to give back. While it has been very hard and I still cringe often when I think back on many moments in my life, I now know I was wrong. My life is so much better. For those who suffer from the same affliction and want to make a change, I highly recommend daily meditation, reading the Stoics, and checking out the School of Life website, a brilliant how-to guide for living a better life. Story 81. My name is Kason. Whenever someone said case in point, I thought, oh cool, I got a point. What does it mean? Story 82. A 9-year-old taught me when I was 30 that a narwhal is a real animal. My best friend found out at 19 that prima donna does not mean prima donna, the singer. They are not quite what you asked, but they still make me laugh regularly. Story 83. It was not so much something I did as something I believed members of the opposite sex did. I thought women put pads on their bodies like bandages and simply trapped their periods inside them. My girlfriend had a lot of fun teasing me about that. I am a 21-year-old man for context. Story 84. My mother refused to show me how to use a tampon because she thought I should stick to pads because they were safer. This was back when searching online was not an option, and I was the first in my friend group to get my period and felt embarrassed. For about 2 years, I inserted tampons with the entire applicator, wondering why they did not work well for me. In high school, a friend who campaigned against plastic waste promoted tampons without applicators, and I finally realized I had made a big mistake. Edit. This became my highest-rated comment and my first silver award. It is about how I could not figure out how to use a tampon in middle school. At least I learned that I am not alone and that many people read instructions before inserting foreign objects into their bodies. Also, please do not criticize my mother. Story 85. Wiping my butt. I always thought everyone reached between their legs to wipe, but after someone made a joke about it, I asked how they did it. Out of curiosity, I asked more people and realized I was the only person I knew who wiped between their legs. Turns out this method is more common than I first thought. Many people wipe from the side or while standing. Story 86. On my last day working at a hardware store in high school, the owner waited for me to ring up my final transaction. It happened to be a return. I processed the return on the computer, but I had forgotten one step I never did while I worked there: running the return through the card reader so the customer actually received their refund. The computer was very old and not connected to the credit card swiper, so there was never a prompt for the customer to swipe their card or confirm the refund amount. I do not know how many returns I processed while I worked there, but as far as I know, none of those customers received their refunds. I am sorry. Story 87. I had been entering 130 on the microwave for years before I realized I only needed to enter 90. Story 88. I didn't know the little arrow next to the car's gas gauge told you which side the gas tank was on. My mind was blown when I found out. I'm 40. Story 89. Not exactly what you're looking for, but a few months ago I discovered that Childish Gambino and Donald Glover are the same person. It was an oh shit moment, since I had been a fan of both personas for a while. Story 90. For about 2 years my bathtub would not drain completely, leaving a small amount of standing water. That created a stubborn ring every 2 weeks. I worked hard to fix the clog but could not clear it, so I scrubbed the tub about every 2 weeks. After about 2 years I adjusted the shower tub diverter and realized it was not fully in tub mode. Story 91. I tend to think I know everything about a subject and then discover I am completely wrong. For example, the word carafe. I thought it was pronounced carafe and used it often at my old job. Corporate visited once and I walked them through my department while saying that our new carafes had been so popular they were selling like crazy. Another example is the word segue. I thought it was a grown-up word, but I misspelled it as segue and used it in all my essays, my advanced placement tests, my finals, and my college essay. I was accepted, so it worked out. Story 92. One of my Arabic neighbors asked my mother's boyfriend at the time, "Hey Bob, which way is north?" Bob pointed, and the neighbor said, "Oh no, I have been praying in the wrong direction for 5 years." Story 93. I just realized I've been pronouncing sherbet as if it has 2 R's. I found out when I asked my wife why she pronounced it that way. It still sounds wrong with 2 R's. I told several friends and they agree it should be spelled sherbet. Story 94. I've been saying hold the fork down. I only found out last week it is hold the fork down. I'm in my 20s and have been saying fork for years. I wonder why nobody ever corrected me. Story 95. Some years ago everyone started hyping edamame, so I gave it a try. I love beans and peas in general, so I wondered why they tasted so disgusting. For a few embarrassing weeks I ate whole edamame when someone ordered them to share in a restaurant because that is what cool kids eat these days, right? By observing others I discovered that you are not supposed to eat the skin. Since then I have loved edamame. I am still wondering if anyone noticed I was doing it wrong. Edit. I love peas, not peas. Darn German autocorrection on the iPhone. Story 96. I swear to God, half of these posts are just my 8-year-old confirming all my suspicions about how he lives his weird little life. Story 97. I always thought the phrase was the ghost is clear, rather than the coast is clear. To be fair, ghosts are clear. Story 98. Not me. It was my first year in the profession, but I see it all the time. People do not know you need to cut the small thread that keeps the vent in your skirts, suit jackets, and winter coats closed. On the first day of intern season, I want to run around with a small pair of scissors, helping people with their brand new suits. Story 99. My father was 71 years old before he tried sprinkling salt on fresh tomato slices. He had always hated fresh tomato, and I suggested he add some salt. He was amazed at how good it tasted and asked everyone he met if they knew about putting salt on tomatoes. He died of heart disease 1 year later, but that was probably unrelated. Story 100. The first time I grilled asparagus on my Weber kettle, I discovered it was 3 to 5 times better than when I had steamed it for 20 years. By steaming, I mean putting the asparagus in the asparagus steamer on the stove and cooking it until it is bright green and semi-firm, not boiling it in a pot of water until it is gray and soggy. Story 101. Brake jobs are expensive, so I had a friend of a friend show me how to change the shoes. He did not explain much. He was focused on getting the job done, so I watched intently. When the brakes needed attention again a year or so later, I made a decision that caused me no small amount of frustration for years to come. I removed the entire caliper. The brake line remained attached, so I worked the old shoes out and cursed until the new ones were in place, all while hunched over in the wheel well with the caliper tethered to the car by a very short rope. Finally, my wife needed the brakes on her new car, and I still could not get the new shoes into place. Jesus, for heaven's sake. I knew I was doing something wrong and went to YouTube. I was stunned. The caliper comes apart with 2 bolts. The part you need to work on can be brought to the bench, and the shoes just slip into place. Story 102. I recently realized that the arrow to the right of the right comment box on Reddit mobile lets you skip to the next comment thread. Story 103. I took my girlfriend at the time to a fancy Baja bucket in San Diego. We each ordered a variety bucket with shrimp, lobster, carne asada, chicken, and other items. Trying to be suave and playful, I fed her a shrimp tail from my bucket. She giggled, and I put the shrimp in her mouth while holding the tail because nobody eats that. She bit down and I pulled the tail away. She chewed, stopped, chewed again, and stopped. Then she stared at me with a "what are you doing" look on her face. This is when I learned about peeling shrimp. Story 104. Whenever my mom took me to McDonald's as a kid, I drank high C. For years I pronounced it hick, and no one corrected me. Story 105. When I used to check my electronic mail, I would go to AltaVista and type "please go to yahoo.com." Story 106. Opening milk bottles is something I had never thought about. They all have a plastic flap you can grip to peel the cover off. I had ignored it for as long as they have existed. My mom, visiting from overseas, watched me open a new bottle and asked why I was not using the flap to grip it. I asked what she meant, and she showed me. I felt like I was 5, learning how to subtract triple-digit numbers all over again. Story 107. This problem began with the Fortnite craze and continued with Apex Legends. I play games with friends, and in these games it is important to identify the direction of distant gunfire by sound. Every time I heard gunshots, I would call out, "There is a team southwest," and my teammates would say, "It sounded like northeast to us." This went on for nearly a year. I assumed I was bad at it and even started calling out the opposite of what I heard. A few days ago, I realized I had my earbuds in the wrong ears. I switched them and the problem was fixed immediately. Story 108. My grandfather, whose name was Dale, discovered at 77 that his birth certificate listed his name as Dell. His social security records, bank accounts, driver's license, and other legal documents all read Dale. He died at 78. His name had been Dell the whole time. Story 109. Until a few months ago, when making Kraft macaroni and cheese, I drained the noodles, returned them to the pot, and added the milk, butter, and cheese packet. Took a long time to remove all the clumps. Then I realized it was easier to add the milk, butter, and cheese to the hot pan and make the sauce while the noodles drain. No more clumps. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.